absolutely. I knew that I had to try. I had to do everything I could to try it. And if I hadn't, I'd regret it the rest of my life. No one wants to be first to the party, right? No one wants to take that first risk. But once somebody's in, then the FOMO sets in, and no one wants to miss out. I had a professor who looked at my career and said, "You're really good at just making very terrible career decisions right as things are going well."
Welcome to Seedstars podcast. Seedstars is an organization that aims to have an impact in emerging markets by supporting the local entrepreneurs, investing in their ventures, but also sharing their story globally because we really believe they are the true heroes. We'll be listening to them and other thought leaders and disruptors that are really shaping the future of tomorrow, and we hope that together we can build a sustainable impact. Before we start, I would like to thank our partner, the Human Security Division from the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs of Switzerland, who made today's episode possible.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm Alex. I'm going to be a host for today's podcast. Just so you know who you're dealing with and you know a little bit more about myself, I used to be employee number one at Seedstars. That was a while ago now. And then I served as an entrepreneur in residence for a while, then as the head of marketing, and then I left. But as you can see, I'm still, in a way, part of the family, and I'm now running a growth and marketing agency called 60 Seconds. Today, I'm very excited. I'm going to be talking with Nat Robinson. He's the founder of Leaf Global Fintech, a company providing mobile financial services to refugees. He's going to talk a lot more about that. And before that, he was also the founder of a company called, and I'm going to butcher the name probably, but he's going to tell me how to say that, Juhudi Kilimo, which provides nice microloans to farmers in Kenya, enabling them to buy assets such as, cows, tools, whatever they might need. So very excited. Nat, welcome to the show, and thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Alex. Thanks for having me.
How was my butchering of the name? Was it okay?
That was perfect. Yeah, Juhudi Kilimo. So we get all kinds of different pronunciations.
All right, perfect. Well, at least I know I wasn't too far. Okay, good.
Yeah, well done.
How are you today?
Good, thanks.
You
Thanks
good?
Again.
Where are you now, actually?
So I'm in Evergreen, Colorado, middle of America, outside of Denver.
Okay,
that's
cool.
where I grew up. So sheltering in place here.
Okay, well, we'll get into that. We'll discuss about the business, both of your business, the one that you started, the two business that you started actually, but also about your journey of, it seems like I'm really interested to know more. So like I said before, I have so many questions. I don't know if we have time to go through all of them, but super excited. Maybe before we jump in, I'd love to know a bit more about your relationship with Seedstars. So if you can tell us a bit more about how you connected with the Seedstars universe, let's call it this way, and a bit more also about the migration entrepreneurship.
Great. No, thank you so much, and honored to be here and excited to talk to you. So thanks again. Yes. So our relationship with Seedstars, I've been two companies have been running and starting, and so this most recent one, Leaf Global Fintech. We, I believe we had applied to some previous rounds of the Seedstars accelerator programs and were contacted for the migration focused prize. And so we had interviewed with that, and we're planning and excited to come out to Switzerland in April. But as you know, things changed a bit. So that's how we really got involved with Seedstars, and are looking forward to continuing to be involved in. Hoping to participate in person again in the future, but really have always been excited about the work that you're doing.
Great, thanks. Let's see how the online summit goes. I think even for Seedstars, it was something new. So everyone is learning, but definitely a weird situation. But yeah, I think it's going to be great. Look, I want to take a few steps back into your journey. Maybe can you tell us a bit more about maybe yourself, where you grew up? Because I think we're going to talk a lot about Africa, but there's a whole thing that happened before Africa. So maybe we can go through that very rapidly, and then we'll jump to that to the rest of the story.
Sure. Happy to share. Absolutely. So I'm originally from Evergreen, Colorado, this small town outside of Denver, in the U.S. It's up in the mountains. I was a recent MBA grad working in Washington, D.C. for Accenture. So as a management consultant, and not particularly excited or happy about the life, but it was a good experience, and found an opportunity to work with the IFC and part of the World Bank, International Finance Corporation. That was a part of a project with Accenture that was looking to invest in companies in East Africa, and particularly impact-driven companies, those that were developing jobs and helping people throughout East Africa. And it was an 8-month assignment in Kenya that I thought would be very exciting, and never lived abroad for that long. And somehow that's turned into a 7-year journey where I went, and one of the startup companies that the IFC was looking at was part of a bank, and it was doing agriculture lending and experimenting with a microfinance model for farmers and providing loans for cows and chickens and irrigation equipment. And I ended up. Yep.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Did you look for that project in a sense, like were you aware and you jumped on the opportunity and you asked to go? Or did it come to you, like they asked you, like, do you want to do this? Would it be of interest to you?
I found it. I had loved traveling, had loved working abroad. In university, I was on semester at sea. So it was a program that went around the world and looked at, visited 10 different countries, and was very eager to try to get abroad again, and love that opportunity to, just immerse myself in another culture, and also saw from the kind of social impact point of view, the potential that business can play in solving big social problems. And in grad school, was very involved in microfinance and got to meet Mohammed Yunus, who started the Grameen Bank and one of the original founders of the microfinance model.
So when you were at Accenture, because one thing I want to understand and I want to ask you is, because I think a lot of people, they're in a job that they don't not necessarily love, and maybe they want to do something maybe a bit more social, or social entrepreneurship or something like this, but they don't really know how to start, or how things will get together and so on. For you, is it something that you had it in your mind? It was some sort of a niche that you had it and you knew where you were going, or you were just at Accenture and then this happened because you were looking for it, but you didn't really have anything planned in a way?
No, I didn't have anything planned. I knew that I wanted to do it. I knew that there was more that I felt like I could offer than just the work that I was doing with Accenture. And Accenture had this program called the Accenture Development Partnerships, where they do some international development work with social enterprises. But you have to be there for 2 years to qualify, and I didn't quite qualify. So I actually went out and found this relationship with through another organization that was working with the World Bank, and brought it back to Accenture. So I pitched it to Accenture as a business development opportunity. Send me to Kenya. I'll do this work for 8 months. I'll get more clients out of this. I'll sell more work to you through the World Bank and IFC. So I think I did have to go out and find it. And it was hard. It's hard trying to do that, especially from the US. But I feel like once I got to Kenya, it was a lot easier to really find opportunities, and ended up staying and working with that pilot program. But it took some effort, certainly, and I did a lot of work with Net Impact as a group of MBA, globally MBA organizations, and they're very well connected, good resources, and I feel like I leveraged that quite a bit to see that there's this whole world out there in social enterprise.
So you said 8 months, correct, on that? On that
so it
project?
was originally an 8-month assignment and project.
Okay, so
but ended up staying.
Exactly. That's what I want to know. What happened? Like, you spend 8 months. The project is, in a way, you're done with your work. What happened? You go back to the US and then go back to Kenya, or you just stayed there? And what happened?
I stayed there. Well, Kenya is just a fantastic place. Absolutely loved it there. People are wonderful. The weather's perfect. It's sunny and warm pretty much year round. Beautiful beaches, great national parks. But really what kept me there was the work. I saw the model that this bank was working on, this asset financing model, was so much more compelling, I think, than any other microfinance model before, because you're providing a loan, and not just money, but you're providing a loan for an asset, and somebody who can then purchase, say, a cow, and then generate income from the milk that cow produces, and then pay off the loan. And then also, if they can't do that, if something happens and they're not able to repay those loans, we as an institution can just repossess the cow and leave that customer, that borrower, in the same position they were before they took the loan. So we could go into these very remote, rural, very low-income communities and provide assets and really have a dramatic impact on the economy and on the lives of those farmers that we were financing. So I really loved the concept and just wanted to explore it more. And so after the 8 months, I said, I'm enjoying this too much. I can't leave everyone here. We've got so much momentum. I should go figure out how to raise money and start a business. I'd never done that before, and so I stayed and spent the next 2 years putting together $5 million in capital, and again, had no personal networks, had no idea what I was doing, stumbled along the way, but was able to do it and actually raised $22 million in a couple of years for the company. And it's still going today and still helping, tens of thousands of rural smallholder farmers in Kenya.
Well, that's what amazes me. That's what I want to know. And I want to understand a bit more about like that moment where you go like, okay, I'm going to stay in Kenya and I'm going to start that company. Sure, you've been 8 months in the country, but 8 months is not that much. You don't have a huge network. You don't necessarily have the money. The knowledge of the country is, every cultural differences and so many things. And you go like, I'm not going to say a bad word, but you go like, I'll do it. How does it happen? Is it something that you could feel that was just growing and like that little voice growing and getting louder? Or it was just like, all right, now I'll do it and it's done?
No, absolutely. I knew that I had to try. I had to do everything I could to try it. And if I hadn't, I'd regret it the rest of my life. And I was like, all right, I'll give it 3 months. I'll put everything into it. I'll try to fundraise. And then at the end of 3 months, I'll evaluate. And if we're not there, then I'll go back to the US and get a job or go back to Accenture. And literally the day before I was about to make that decision, we'd struggled, couldn't get any money. No one would talk to us. People thought you can't give loans for farmers and take cows as collateral. That's crazy. They're livestock. There's no way that's going to work. It's too risky. And then finally, an organization called Kiva, Kiva.org, that's a crowdfunding peer-to-peer lender in the US. They had rejected us 2 times before to be a partner. And then finally I applied the third time and they approved us. They said, okay, we'll let you guys in. You're really high risk. We'll put you on our website and you can raise money for your farmers that way. I was like, and that happened right before I was about to,
to quit. It's often the case, right? It's just at the right moment, the good things happen, right?
Exactly. And that opened the door for everything else. If finally Kiva was in, there were all these investors just waiting. I'm sure you've seen this with a lot of your other entrepreneurs, is no one wants to be first to the party, right? No one wants to take that first risk. But once somebody's in, then the FOMO sets in and no one wants to miss out. And so everyone started to pile in after that. So we got all these great investors, Acumen Fund, Soros, Rockefeller Foundation, Ford Foundation, they all started to pile in, but it was really Kiva was that first group that came in, not even with a lot of money. I think it was like $11,000 a month that we could raise on their platform, but it was enough to kind of keep things going and really proved our model a little bit, gave us some credibility. So then I thought, well, I better stick around. Let me give it another 3 months and another 3 months, and just kept going and kept pushing. And then next thing I know, 7 years later, we've got this great company, and I've gotten through a lot of those hurdles. So if I wouldn't have kept pushing through, if I would have waited one more day, said given up a day before, I would have never done that.
It's crazy. So you're in a country you don't really know because it's only been a few months. It's your first time building a company. Basically, like you're learning everything, you're doing everything, you're trying everything. And it's a business that you know a bit of, but it's not necessarily, you don't know everything about it. There's like 3 things that are pretty intense together, pretty tough to go through. But then on top of that, I guess you also have, like we said before, the differences in culture, maybe issues like corruption in different parts of the world, and especially maybe in Kenya. And that's just, issues on top of issues on top of issues. How does that feel? And I'm sure at some point you must have been like, totally overwhelmed. And how do you deal with that? Because it's not just building a company, it's building a company plus all these other things that happen.
Yeah. And looking back on it, yeah, I think I was crazy. Maybe I was just young and naive and didn't know any better. But I think at that point too, just I had nothing to lose and could fail quickly and could learn quickly. I spent a lot of time, studying and learning Swahili so I could speak the local language and talk with our farmers. And I think that went a long way and built a lot of trust. I think Kenya is very open to foreigners, and it helps that English was also a first language. So I think it was a bit easier to integrate into the culture. But yeah, the corruption's a real issue, and I think I was also fortunate having really good mentorship from one of the directors of the bank that we were working with in Kenya, who's Kenyan. He's an amazing person, Aleke Dondo, who is the director of KREP, but also co-founder with Jehudi, was a board member with us, and really a wonderful guide and mentor for me. And he could help me understand the landscape a bit more, the culture, the government, the corruption. I think very, very big heart, cared so much about the social and economic development of Kenya, and not corrupt at all. I think he took a very strong stance of being transparent and open, and would even call out politicians when we were in conversations with them if they're asking for bribes. So I think that helped a lot, and really, helped my confidence, but also helped me learn some of the things that I didn't know about. And I think we were a good team. I feel like I tried to bring some of the more technical business background work to what we were doing, and then Aleke helped provide a lot more in the context and the culture and everything else. But I also think it was just pushing forward and being optimistic and young and naive, and not worrying about what I didn't know, and just pushing along anyway and trying to learn as fast as I could.
How old were you at that point?
I was, 27.
Okay.
27, and then running a microfinance bank essentially in Kenya. There's no way I could get away with that in the US.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, I think if you knew all the things that could go wrong and all the things that could happen, I think you would have never done it, and you were like, it's way too complicated. Let's just do something else.
Easier, right? Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. Okay, cool.
So the not knowing what you don't know, it's
an opportunity in a way. Exactly. So you of course I want to talk about that, because you wrote a book which I actually ordered on Amazon 2 days ago.
Oh,
I haven't received it yet, but you wrote a book about your journey, because I think that's what it is. It's a journey. Why did you want to write a book, first of all? Because it's, I guess, a lot of work. So why did you want to write it, and what was your process? Did you write it right from the start, having this idea of writing a book from the start, or was it like at the end, it was like, that was way too crazy, I need to put it on paper?
Yeah. No, same thing with coming to Kenya. I didn't go there expecting to start a company and run a company. I never thought I'd ever write a book. Who writes books? I don't know what know how to write or do any of that. So kind of same ideas, like just thought it was, starting Jehudi was so important, something I feel like I needed to do. I didn't care about all the stuff that I didn't know that I couldn't do it. And then writing the book, the main purpose of that was really to share a lot of the learnings and all the mistakes that I made. Because I had no idea what I was doing going into there. And I feel like there's just got to be some better way of getting this information out to other entrepreneurs. So at least, they don't make my mistakes, they make other mistakes, and try to learn from this, especially, 8 years ago when social enterprise and social entrepreneurship was kind of new and impact investors were kind of getting going. We had a lot of challenges. And so I put all of that in the book, was very open and honest. But then I also wanted to encourage people anywhere in the world to get into social enterprise, and also to look at East Africa and Kenya. I mean, there's such negative press and publicity, especially in the US, about the terrorist attacks, Al-Shabaab, Ebola, the pirates. No one sees Kenya as a safe place or a fun place to be. And I wanted to really highlight all the wonderful aspects of Kenya that I would experience in a day-to-day life. So I put all that in the books. I have both all the business experiences, and then a lot of my crazy personal travel adventures. You're getting chased by rhinos and flying little planes. That was
my next question, because when I ordered the book, there was like I don't know how you call that, but the summary of the book, and at the end it says there's two stories. You can tell both of them or just pick one. I don't know, but I want to hear at least one of them. I really do. About racing camels and running from rhinos.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to ask. Don't spoil the whole thing because I want to read the book,
Okay.
but I need to know at least one of these two.
I'll give some highlights. Sure. So the camel derby, the Marlal Camel Derby, is up in northern Kenya. Not the safest place. There's a lot of insecurity there. I took a group of like 15 Americans up there to participate in this camel derby that they hold every year. And I had a guy that had a camel, and he said, "Look, we're doing this race. You should get up there." And had a blast. It was a 10K camel race, which camels aren't really designed to run really well. It's a lot of up and down, so it's really uncomfortable.
Did you have to train for it, or?
No, I had no idea what I was doing. Again, just jumped on that camel and started running.
That's a recurring theme, right? It's I can see that we're getting somewhere. Like it's something
that's not going to slow me down, right? Yep. So ended up doing fairly well, almost won, but I had some issues right at the end. The camel just gave up on me.
Oh God!
Got fifth place, and then oh gosh, the rhino thing. That was more of I was in the back seat of a car. We're doing our self game drive, and came across a bush, around some bushes, and found a mother rhino and a baby, which was fun. But then that's when they tend to be more dangerous, and so we put the car in reverse. And of course, it made that noise, the beep noise. It was a tiny little RAV4. It was a small car. We're probably a third of the size of the rhino. And that's when the mother rhino really got angry and started charging at us. And so we're in full reverse, the mother rhino running at us and the little baby running alongside her. And I was in the back seat. And I just remember rolling up the window as if that was going to help.
Just in case, you never know. Just close the doors. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah, just close my eyes. But we made it. We survived.
Oh, God. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure exactly. If you do like, something like this, starting a company in a country you don't know, you're going to have, even if something goes wrong, you're going to have great stories to tell. And I think that's
exactly.
So yeah,
you just gotta roll with it, right?
Exactly. Can't wait to read the book. Actually, because it has come up a few times, talking about you, like you said, I didn't know what I was doing, but I just, went and just tried. I guess now you sort of used to that feeling of, not knowing what you're doing. So now I guess maybe you're dealing with it a little bit better. But at the beginning, if you try to remember at the beginning, how did you, force your brain and yourself just to, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm still going to go and do it? Because I think for a lot of people, they go like, oh, but I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm not supposed to be doing it, so I'm not going to do it. How do you even trick your brain, whatever it takes, but how do you actually go and do that thing?
Jump in and just do it. Yeah, I know. And it's hard. I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs, especially those who have, jobs or full-time jobs, have an idea, want to start it, but just think, oh, I want to get some more experience, or I want to, wait for this. I want to learn this a little bit more.
Perfect moment.
Yeah, wait for the perfect time, and you'll wait your whole life if that's the case. There's always a reason not to do it. There's always a reason to stay. So I think just pick up and do it. And I guess I just started to I don't know if it was the travel early on where you just kind of learn how to adapt and seeing coming from a different background and a different culture, and you see things differently. You look at in context, and I think that's helped, I guess, give some of that blind confidence to just sort of jump in and get going and do things. I feel like I'm losing that though as I get older. I don't know why. I'm getting more conservative.
But it's also, I think also you get used to it. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. And even with the small things, because of course, well, you did it, with something quite big, but even if someone doesn't feel, that they, doing that big of a jump, even the small things that you said, traveling, discovering something new, it's something that you go, I'll go and do it. And then you go and do it. And then it adds up. And at some point, you might be able to do the bigger, take a bigger risk.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly. So start with the small steps, right? Yep. Exactly. Even just, something new, try it each day. And then you build a bit more of that confidence, and then you just keep going. So it's important.
All right. Amazing. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing the stories. I really want to know. Now I feel better.
Okay, good.
So you've been, if we go back to your timeline, you were running the company, you ran the company for 7 years, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So 7 years. And then what happened at the end, in a way, of the company, where you decided it was time for you to do something else? Or what was the story behind, stopping this and moving to something else?
I know. And I had a professor who looked at my career and said, you're really good at just making very terrible career decisions right as things are going well. So if you look at, I had this great job in Washington, D.C. with Accenture consulting, and then left all that to go to Kenya and to go to Africa to do a startup in agriculture microfinance. And then finally got that going, raised all the money, got through all those hard hurdles of starting a company, profitable. Things are going great, decided to leave all of that and then move back to the US to go to law school, of all things. Like a lot of friends who really questioned that decision. And some of it was, I think I was just ready for a change. And I'm sure, a lot of entrepreneurs run into this where they've got a company that's grown, has become a, mature company. It's got processes and bureaucracy and, which is important to keep things going. And you kind of lose a bit of that early startup experimental feel, and so I was a little bit of that, and then also I think ready for a change, even from Kenya. I was kind of missing some of my family in the U.S. And thought, well, let me take a break. This is a good opportunity. I've always wanted to go to law school to to learn law, and also had, I think, a lot of our challenges at Jehudi in raising money came from that disconnect between the legal team, the legal side, and the business side, especially with the investors and impact investors. We had a lot of pro bono free law firms that were advising these funds, and they were coming from very different backgrounds and didn't know as much about what was happening on the deal, and that really delayed a lot of the funding. And then also us as a company felt like that we were very much outgunned by a lot of these funds because we didn't have the legal services, we didn't have law firms that could go through these 130-page shareholders agreements and loan agreements. So I felt like we were very much at a disadvantage. And so I thought by going to law school, I could get that background, get that experience, and then come back and advise entrepreneurs or work for funds and kind of merge those fields a little bit more, the law and the business. That was the plan. So,
but it never happens the way we planned, right?
Never happens the way it's supposed to, right?
So what the company is still running, right?
Yeah. So Jehudi's still going. Yeah.
What did you do? Did you sell your shares? Did you just decide to do something else and completely get out of the company? What's the status?
It's all in the book, right? How to do that. I did that transition. So there are a lot of things. I was ready to leave Kenya. I had a very serious girlfriend at the time who had just moved back to the US. But I think I was, again, just ready to move on, ready to transition. I did spend the next 6 months, once I announced it to the board and our partners and our staff, I spent the time recruiting my replacement. I found a fantastic Kenyan who is working in Rwanda and running a bank in Rwanda. And he just wanted to come home to Kenya where his family was. I got lucky, but recruited him, convinced him to come back to Kenya, put him in place, transitioned a bit. Jehudi's continuing to do well and expand. I think we'll get into this. The big challenge facing a lot of microfinance institutions in East Africa, and particularly Kenya, is this revolution of digital lenders and app-based lenders like Branch International and Tala that are much faster, much cheaper, and more accessible. And so that's what really inspired me to kind of get into this next step was seeing some of those technologies and how they're really affecting the landscape. And so I ended up transitioning out. There was some challenges with shareholding because we were a nonprofit at Jehudi. So we went from a nonprofit to a for-profit. It was a nonprofit pilot program.
Okay.
And so I ended up, and this is probably my fault. I didn't see like I should play more of a role in this. I didn't get equity as a founder going into it because of the way the transition from nonprofit to for-profit went. And also, just in Kenya and East Africa, having liquidity for equity, it doesn't happen quite as it does in the US and in Europe. Whereas if you have shares, there's not like you do an IPO or there's a lot of big exits, especially in social enterprise, where you can get that money back. So, share plans were not that popular, and my staff didn't really want them, or management didn't want them. So it wasn't really a thing. And I wasn't in it for the money anyway. I was in it for the experience and also just to help solve a problem and love that part of it. But I do think that's probably something I should have done a little bit differently, was to negotiate earlier on for some more equity.
Yeah, I
with
mean,
the
in a
board
way, it
and with the
was
investors.
you had enough on your plate, right? It was your first company, and like we said
Yep.
before, on top of many other things, I think it's not bad when you think about the whole thing. You can't blame
Yeah. And
yourself, I guess.
no,
So
it's just hard
you
being selfish too. It's like I feel like I'm the last person I should be thinking about taking care of myself. Like, oh, I want shares, I want this equity, and I think that's a good advice for other founders, is really fight for that. I think that's important, because if things do go well, yeah, you want to be compensated, not just so you become rich, but then what does that allow you to do? Is if you have that capital, you can be an angel, you can get involved in helping other companies. That's
do
just a
something
tool
else.
for
Yeah,
more.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So I blew it on that one, but it was fine. Don't worry, I
Yeah,
did okay.
yeah, exactly. I think so. So you go back to the US, you
Yep,
start your
law school. Yep,
law school, yeah, and then what
yep.
happens? At some point, you
No,
missed
so
Africa. What was
I
like? You
did.
were like, oh
I
God, I need to go back.
get back. I know, and I thought law school would be a good way to like reintegrate back into the U.S., into American society, a bit easier. And I don't think I ever can now get integrated back into American society. So yeah, really, really struggled, and certainly on the international side. I joined the board of two companies in Africa that I was friends with the CEOs, just to stay connected, and continue to just keep in touch with my friends who are all doing well, and having these great companies. And in particular, this guy, Matt Flannery, who was the founder of Kiva, that original lender that helped us. He left and started a fintech company called Branch, that's doing loans, app-based loans, and started in Kenya. And he needed some help as he was getting going. And so I spent the summer of my second year of law school working with him and helping them look for different markets around the world to expand to beyond Kenya, and just had a blast. Just really loved that, talking to the partners, seeing how their model works. And it was so much cheaper and easier to provide loans to people through their phone. They download an app, it reads all the data on their phone, gives a credit score, and get a loan from it. But what I saw was that they're still going for that middle to upper income urban market in Kenya, in Nairobi, at least to start. I think they're all over the country now. And I thought they're really missing that unbanked group. So the people who don't have access to bank accounts, the farmers that we were financing, the rural, the lower income. That's where this type of service could really help if it's done well, because it's cheaper and you can access it anywhere. You don't have to have a bank branch that you go into. And so I just couldn't stop thinking about that, and saw Branch go from basically 1,000 borrowers, and then 8 months later, almost a year later, there were 200,000. And it took me 7 years at Jehudi to go from zero to 20,000. It's like, wow, the ability to scale this type of technology is
Huge,
incredible.
yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, gosh, there's got to be something here. And I just couldn't get it out of my head, and just loved continuing to spend the time in East Africa. And then while at law school, I had
So you were going back to
yeah,
Kenya. You were doing back and forth.
I spent like a summer internship in
Okay.
East Africa. So but doing a lot of travel, and would spend a couple weeks at a time. It was a lot. But there was a business plan competition called the Holt Prize. Familiar with
Yes.
them? Yeah. And about 3 years ago, their theme was the global refugee crisis, and trying to come up with business ideas to address that. And I was at Vanderbilt University. I had helped set up a social enterprise group called Project Pyramid when I was at business school there. And they were very involved in running the Holtz Prize. And so the director brought me in and said, hey, you should do this. You should join. I grabbed another law student who was my friend, who was interested in immigration. And then they paired us up with two business students. And we started brainstorming ideas for how to address the global refugee crisis. And that's where I got, I think, really inspired, is that I saw this same access to finance problem with the refugees as I did with rural smallholder farmers in Kenya, and that you get somebody who just, for whatever reason, are not able to access the financial system. And with refugees is because they've lost their national identity. They've crossed that border. They could be banked before. They, real people with assets, with everything else, just like you and me. And then now they're suddenly lost all of that,
Nothing, yeah.
and can't, and are just dependent on these host nations. I thought there's got to be something here, especially with the digital financial services revolution that's going on, and now this giant population that's getting worse and worse. There's got to be something that I can do to develop a solution to help this refugee challenge in people who are fleeing conflict around the world. And so that was my team ended up pitching a very different business idea at Holt. It was
like it's often the case, right?
I know, it was a fun one. It was relating to cruise ships and helping people cross the Mediterranean safely, and had a whole business model around it, and brought in some legal stuff where we could connect the cruise ship to the country and the flag and get different asylum laws from the ship. It was great.
But
we did pretty well.
It just started
It's like, oh man,
something.
more ideas. And we did well, got flown out to Dubai, made it to the finals. And I thought, man, maybe I should get back into this social enterprise space. I was a little burned out before, but there's got to be more here. And so, spent the last year of law school working on these ideas, and came up with this other concept within the group, but ended up looking at financial services for refugees and someone who's fleeing and carrying cash with them across borders, which is dangerous. They get robbed, get taken advantage of by border guards. They can't access funds from family who want to support them, and then they get dependent on these host countries. So I also been reading up a lot on blockchain. I had a friend of mine from Djibouti who was working for a bank in the US and was really excited about the technology. And in the book, one of my big challenges was systems and data and reporting. And we had a lot of challenges with our loan tracking system. So I thought, if anyone's going to get into microfinance, start with a good system, get really good visibility into the operations, the metrics, and saw now blockchain as a leading cutting edge disruptive technology to do it. So combining all of those, the digital financial services, the refugee market, and now the promise of blockchain technology, put all those together, and we had a great pitch deck with a lot of buzzwords.
So that's like 2016, 17?
Yeah, 16, 17. Yep.
Let me know if I'm wrong, but you're starting to build a company, and at the same time you're doing because you're arriving at the end of law school. So you're building the company and having your exams at the same, you're finishing law school at the same time, correct?
It was a lot. But look at all the resources we could access. That we had all these grad students who are there, who have time. We have all these faculty members doing research, and then also all these fantastic pitch competitions now, and opportunities to win money, to get feedback and mentors from doing these pitches. And so we started to apply for these student pitch competitions and started to win them and get money from them. And so then I think we won $15,000 in our first one, and then $20,000 in the second one. So now we've got this, grant capital to use to further build out the idea. But at the height of the grad experience, I had, I think, 14 grad students working with me and some undergrads doing some blockchain development, and across all different departments. I had the law school, the business school, the undergrad, the international development group, and then we're in the newspaper all the time with the news with the university. So I just thought this is a great environment to start a business. You've got access to all this talent and resource, and in a place that you don't have to spend money on office space. We could just use the business school. So
I need to ask as a side note, because I'm curious. You seem to be very good at doing many different things at once. How do you it? We'll go back to the story, but I really want to know, how do you usually organize your day? Because I know that's something I'm struggling with. I know I have many different things to do.
Yep.
I have a system. Not sure it's perfect, but that's why I'm asking, because I'd love to have maybe your system on how you organize your day and how you strategize your week or whatever, however it works. But it seemed to work, so I have to ask.
Yeah, no, and you're right. I think that was very critical, and I think that also helped me coming back to law school after working for a while. Is I feel like I got very good at organizing your day. You have to, and just scheduling in your time. And keeping to a schedule. And so I continue to do that at law school on how much time I'm going to spend on each class, in class, and then also cutting out all the rest of the stuff. So I didn't have a TV.
Do you do it on paper? I know it's very precise, but do you do it on paper?
No,
do you do it
I do it on Google Calendar. Yeah. So I just do mostly on the Google Calendar. Yep. Plan out my day, and then I'll do blocks of time for certain different things. And then also knowing when during the day am I most I think the mornings for me are the best time to do very focused work or some creative work. And then I start to kind of lose energy around 11 as I get hungry.
Same,
and then
meetings, and you do all the other stuff. That is.
Yeah. And then early afternoon, good time to exercise. And then, or reading, kind of catching up on news, those things in the afternoon. So also making sure to balance, the day and time according to when you're most active and in energy. And I think it was helpful in school to be able to have some of that flexibility. I don't think everyone does have that, especially if they're running a full-time job and trying to start a company too. But I do think that helped a lot, is being very organized and with my time and about when I'm scheduling stuff, and then using those tools, if it's Google Calendar or others, to keep me on task.
Okay, yeah, good. Interesting, super interesting. Thanks.
Yeah.
So going back to the story. So you've built let's say you build the foundation of the company.
Yep.
And if we take the time, that's 2000. You're launching in 2019, correct? So
Yep.
you're going live in 5 different countries. Let me know if I say something wrong, but in 5 countries
you got it.
across Africa, and you have on your first 4 weeks 700 transactions. Is that something you were expecting? Is that better than you expected? What was your reaction when when you started?
And now that we've kind of gone through the story, I'd love to hear your perspective, because once I'm in the middle of it, it's just hard. I'm so focused on this. So yeah, I mean, 2017, I thought, this is great. We've got all this momentum, got all these students. I should be able to raise all this money. I've got a previous, successful company. I know all these investors now. Now I have this network, whereas before I didn't know anybody. And I got this cool idea that's using this new cool technology. There's all this funding available. Something great is going to happen. And graduated, took the bar exam, got licensed as a lawyer, and then it was like nothing happened, and no one wanted to invest in us. Refugees were too risky. Blockchain was too risky. It's too early. You need traction. I guess that's a big difference between now and Jehudi. Is at least when I came with Jehudi, there was a little bit of traction. There was a pilot program. They had some revenue. They had a few customers. It wasn't completely from scratch, and we had this big parent company bank that we were spinning out of that gave us some credibility too. Whereas now I'm just starting from scratch and from the beginning, which is a lot harder. Yeah. So getting that seed funding together has been so hard. I think we're still struggling with that. But we're fortunate to get some crazy things that happen too. We got into a pitch competition with the Vatican and the Pope. So we actually pitched.
That was one of my, that was one of, maybe we can go through that, because you went through Techstars.
So that was after. Yeah.
Oh, that was after, because you won also best bootstrap startup at South by Southwest.
Yeah.
And
South
then
by Southwest. Yeah.
You have on one of the bio that I read online, it was like, and it's, Leaf Global is also recognized by the Vatican. That's like a very nice statement.
Right.
What does it mean?
No, exactly. Yeah, and then the South by Southwest too. We won $1,000 from that pitch competition. Great opportunity in Texas and Austin to get in front of everyone, but didn't result in any money, any seed money. Same thing with the Vatican. Wonderful exposure. We got a free trip to Rome. Made some wonderful contacts there, but didn't raise any money out of that. None of the companies that were part of that cohort did either. And we were even trying to set up a partnership with the Catholic Church because they're everywhere, they're global, they do a lot of work with refugees, but weren't able to get anything going with any of that. And then got into the Techstars program in Denver with Western Union, which as a money transfer company, biggest in the world, we thought this is a fabulous partnership. This is fantastic. And they know a lot about Techstars and they have a good reputation, and went through that program, loved it, got a lot of good resources, mentors. We're still in talks with Western Union about a partnership. They're a little slow. Big organizations are always tough to partner with, but it's still moving, and they really like what we're doing. And then also that came with a bit of seed capital. So it was $145,000 in equity and convertible notes. And I thought, well, this is it. Now this is going to help us get over that hurdle, and all these investors are going to come in and want to support us. But nope, it didn't happen either. Yeah.
Because of course, I mean, I can imagine the hurdle and the difficulties of raising that money. But talking about your previous company, Jehudi, you also had, Rockefeller Foundation, Ford Foundation, Deutsche Bank. You had these huge companies behind you. So you did pretty well in terms of raising money. What would be, now that you went through that, you managed to have these companies backing you, but you also saw the struggle that, what it meant, the time consuming period of, how much time and energy it would take to do that. What would be your advice, someone starting an enterprise or a company like yours? What would be your advice to do to get these kind of investors?
Get going. Yeah. And so I think, and that's, I'm in this like valley of death before we can get to those big institutional investors. And the big thing that everyone talks about, everyone wants to see is traction, right? Is trying to get revenue is the gold standard for traction. Can someone paying for your goods or services, whatever you're offering? Because then that shows at least there's a market demand for it, but any proxy for traction too. So if it's customer registrations or if it's letters of intent from customers, anything that you can show that you're getting close to it. And so what we did with right after Techstars, they have this big demo day at the end of their program. And our goal was to go live and to do like one transaction or something. We had really low expectations. I think we ended up bumping that up to 100 or 400. Like 2 weeks before demo day, we're just scrambling, trying to get going because the regulatory environment for the work that we're doing with refugees, moving money, undocumented group, cross-border, new technology, everyone thinks about crypto when they talk about blockchain. So we were real worried about the regulatory side, and that takes forever to get going. And just fortunately found a fantastic partner in Uganda that had already built a smartphone wallet. And we had done all the non-smartphone work to help refugees who don't have smartphones. And so we were able to connect our front end with their wallet that's running on the back end, and they were connected to a bank. So they had all the regulatory approvals. And within about a week, we're able to then turn on services 4 or 5 countries to help people move money back and forth across those countries on the wallet and then through our non-smartphone front end. So suddenly now we're live in 5 countries. And then within that first week, posted those 400 transactions. We weren't charging for the transactions though. Yeah. Sorry. So it was 700 after that. The 400 was within the first first week. So we started with just 3 refugees in Uganda that we've been talking to. And quickly they grew to 60. They went out and told friends and family and got other people registered. And at least we now had some traction. We had people using the platform, sending transactions, and it worked. It worked really well. And so that was fun to pitch at a demo day. But we're still trying to get the institutions, those big names in. We've been talking to a lot of them, got a lot of good progress. And then, of course, now with the pending global financial crisis and coronavirus, I don't know how that's going to change things on the funding side. It's certainly created some fabulous opportunities for us to help people with our wallet now on the digital side that we're really trying to work and to push, as cash has become a vector for contagion with the virus, and people are isolated now. There's much greater need for connection digitally, and that's essentially what we've built. So we're scrambling to try to now transition to support our customers, our clients, the refugees in this current crisis.
So what's your
went off a bit there?
what's your biggest challenge right now with the company? Like the thing that you're facing, on a daily basis that is really where you're really struggling?
We've been struggling on trying to get these partnerships to work. I think that's one of the downsides of relying on another partner for the back end work, is that all your progress is going to really be tied to them. I know that that's hard as an early stage company, and that's usually a good time to pivot or try something else. So you're not as dependent. And you're not sitting around waiting. And so we've been trying to build, redundancy, find some other partners, get that going. But we're close. I think we're really close to turning on the revenue model. So we make money with the foreign exchange fees. So as people are moving money between currencies, we're able to offer a competitive rate, but a little bit of a margin to make revenue on that. And then still fundraising, still trying to get capital together. Closing our seed round. I think those are the big ones. And questions everyone's asking is customer acquisition after progress or traction is how are you going to get customers? How are you going to get them? And
how do you actually?
I did this.
How do you actually get your customers now? Is it mostly word of mouth and?
Yep, it's a lot of word of mouth, and what we're trying to show and demonstrate within the refugee communities is that there's a very, very tight trust network within those communities. So if you're able to get in and to convince some of the leaders in the community of the services, when they refer your app or your services to other family or friends, that comes with a lot of trust, which is important, especially if you're asking for savings. Excuse me, you're asking for somebody to put their own money under your system. That's hard, and especially if you're new, you don't have that credibility or brand. Having that connection with the family member who's trusted is really important. And so that's what we've been predominantly doing is the word of mouth. You can download the app and register that way, or get registered by a family or friend who's acting as an agent on our behalf. And so that's the model we're starting with, and then looking at doing partnerships with groups like Western Union and some of the mobile money providers, so the telcos, as we're driving volume onto their platforms. But it's hard to demonstrate that early.
Yeah, I can imagine. There's also I think a misunderstanding. I mean, now that I'm saying it sounds sort of logical. Yeah. But of course, when I did some research, I was like, oh, okay, now I sort of see. There's also a misunderstanding about, refugees being, people that don't have wealth, or they're always poor and they don't have money. And it's not necessarily the case. I mean, that's what we think because of the news, because of everything we see and we read. But when maybe you can tell us a bit more about that, because I think that's very interesting, because I think it's not the case. And it's actually completely different.
Yep, and that's exactly what we're trying to prove. And if we completely fail with everything else, I hope that we can change the mindsets of some of the financial institutions and partners that, yes, a refugee market and is a very bankable group and community. And certainly, talking about refugees, it's a very, very diverse population. You get all different types of socioeconomic status from refugees. But I do think there is that stigma globally that they're someone's dependent, they don't have any money, that they're poor, and that they can't take financial services, and that's exactly what we're trying to change. And we've seen this in the research. There's a great article that Tufts University put out on the bankability of refugees, and looking at how much money is sent and received between family members. And so you've got both people fleeing conflict in conflict zones, but also resettled friends and family who are in Europe or in the US who are constantly sending money back home to family. And I think those are the networks and cash flows that we're looking to tap into, because it's expensive to send money to a lot of the countries that we're in, and also not safe. If you're picking up cash at a Western Union agent or at MoneyGram, anywhere else, you're potentially a target. Whereas if you can send directly to their phone, and they can, instead of cashing out, they can use that phone to make purchases or send it to mobile money. That's a much safer, much more convenient, and we think is going to be a much cheaper option for refugees. But getting over that hurdle is really, really hard if it's seen as not a viable market. And even with our investors, we're constantly fighting to say, look, this is big, this is something good here. And since no one's done it before, it's hard to be that first. So.
But do you see a difference of mindset? Do you see that people are starting to get it, or it's still very, very early?
Not yet, it's still early.
Okay.
And so one of the strategies we have is, refugees, this is one use case for this cross-border wallet that's not smartphone based in the region. There's also these traders, these people who buy goods in one country and sell them in the other, also fairly low income, unbanked, they're carrying cash back and forth. They also have the need for this the service, very similar challenges, but much more higher volume transactions, and also potentially moving more money. But that's, I think, debatable. But at least if we can get that group going, we can show that there's a business model for the wallet. Then it's easy for a refugee to use it too. So trying to build out a business case with a different market. That then opens up the door then for refugees, also for investors and partners. They see, oh, this is a viable business. I'll work with you this way while we prove out that refugee market. I think that's what we're working on now.
You're talking about profitability and making money in a way. And maybe it's a naive question, but I think, what's your take on it? Because I think a lot of people, you're building, and if you read I was on your LinkedIn profile, to be honest, and it says, and I think it's very interesting because it says, building profitable companies that drive social change in emerging markets. And I think there's still, or at least that's the way I feel it, but maybe you can tell me, it's like, when you helping people, you sort of, but you can't make money, it's sort of, it doesn't go well together. you still feel that, or do you think it's slowly changing? That's at least the way I see it. It's slowly changing, but it's still going to take a lot of time for people to accept that. Yes, you can have an impact. Yes, you can help people, but you can still be a for-profit and still be, of interest to investors and actually making money.
Yep, it's a huge question, and something that we went back and forth a lot on even at Jehudi. And the microfinance industry is a good example of things that have worked and things that haven't. So you've got the initial model, the Grameen Bank model, that was really helping a lot of people, and it was profitable. It was became for-profit business that then spurred a lot of other microfinance institutions around the world to help the poor, the unbanked, and then you started to get other companies like Comportamos and SKS Microfinance in India that pushed it a little bit far, and had either IPOs, went public, raised more venture capital, had much more pressure to produce returns, and then that really backfired, because then they were much more hard on collections, on interest rates, and putting a very vulnerable population even more at risk, to the point where in India, borrowers were committing suicide. And that's when the government stepped in and shut down lending. And so I think it's a slippery slope if you're not thinking about both of those, right? Trying to keep the customer base, the vulnerable population at heart, and then not trying to maximize that profit motive. I think that's what's a hard balance, because I see a big opportunity for a for-profit company to solve any of these social problems, and doing it as a business versus a nonprofit, because you can raise more capital in the capital markets. You can invest in people, you can invest in technology to deliver a better service that could be cheaper than a nonprofit model. And it's potentially easier to scale that than a pure nonprofit. And I think there's been good examples in both directions. There's great nonprofits that have scaled really well. One Acre Fund is an example of that in East Africa. And then, for-profit companies that lose their mission, that drift the other way. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do at Leaf, that I also try to do at Jehudi, was to try to get those initial investors who do align to that social impact and that social mission, but are also looking for a return. So you kind of embed that a bit into your capital structure. Also, same with Jehudi Kalimo, is that if we go after a market that's not being addressed by the big banks, if we started to go up market and doing bigger loans for more wealthier farmers, we'd run into competition from some of the banks. So staying into the market that we're in, and of course, if we're exploiting our farmers, they're not going to repay the loans. If our interest rates are too high, if we're doing recoveries too hard, people are going to not take the loan. So there's I think a really good business model also for us with refugees, to make sure that we're still being profitable, not exploiting our customer base, and then still working in a place where the big companies are not operating. So, but I do think it's hard to get all that right. It's sometimes I feel like we're a bit more on the nonprofit looking side with Leaf, because we haven't proven out the business model yet, and then that frightens away some of the investors. But at the same time, I don't want to just be purely focused on our cross-border trader market, right?
so that leads me to my next question. Is like on a personal level, how do you measure the success of your company? Because you have these two things in a way that you're doing. Yes, you're trying to make a profit, but you're also trying to helping people and make the world a better place. So how do you is it 50-50? I'm sure it's never 50-50, because it's always sort of change. But how do you decide in a way like, okay, now what we're doing, we are successful because yes, we're bringing profit and we're also helping these people? How do you do it?
Yeah, and that's, I think, again, having really good data, good metrics on all of that, so you can make those decisions. And I think that goes all the way up to the strategic decisions, board decisions, and same thing, ran into that at Jehudi. So for example, the interest rates we were charging farmers, what do we charge that? Are we below market? Are we above market? Do we try to make more money on that? And then having your investors align to whatever that strategy is. But in addition to the financial metrics, having some of that, those impacts and social development metrics that we had at Jehudi, we had really robust data on everything that our farmers were doing. We had a really nice SMS tool that we used, the Progress Out of Poverty Index, to analyze changes in poverty levels. It's not perfect. It's really hard to get a lot of that information and data, but at least something that you can bring that conversation to a board level decision. It's like, okay, we're looking to make a business decision. Hopefully those are aligned really well. And I feel like they usually are. If you're looking out for your customers and their best interest, you're going to make a good longer term financial decision. But it's really not easy. But I do think having really robust data on all that helps, at least helps with some of those decisions. And for us, if we're able to, some of our metrics are increased savings. So looking at the wallets, the amount of money that a refugee has and how much money they're able to build and have access over time. That's money that they're not carrying with them or at risk of being taken. And then also the volume that people are sending into the wallet. So how much money that they're receiving from abroad. That's money that someone's not dependent on that host country. So looking at those plus transaction revenue and turnover on that side. So it's a mix of all of those. But I do think if we're able to be profitable, have a company that's growing and is also providing the services for refugees, then it's a win that we've done it. Then we've done something that no one else has and provided a financial service for refugees that's cross borders like this.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty amazing. I want to, because I don't want to take too much of your time, but I want to ask you one last question.
Sure.
You are and I want to wrap up with this. You are a mentor at Conscious Venture Lab, correct? And I was on their website and they have that question on the website. And I want to actually ask you that question. And they ask, what would happen if businesses around the world would start caring as much about people as they do about profit? And I'd love to end with this and have your answer to that question.
Yeah, and I think now more than ever, right, our private sector really being tested on that. The fact that we've got a global crisis that essentially humanity is a bit at risk. It really makes anyone involved in any company to question that very much, to look at what are we doing and is this really important given the light of the state of the world. And I think if there's anything positive that's going to come out of this situation is that you are going to get a lot of companies and a lot of people working for those companies starting to ask those questions. Is what I'm doing important enough in the light of the world? Is there more that I could be doing beyond just trying to improve that bottom line to make that profit? And I hope that does change some of those behaviors or those strategies of the businesses that aren't focused on that. I think we've seen a lot of good changes the last 10 years of companies shifting to be more, socially responsible or considering other constituencies besides just shareholder maximization. So I do hope we get some of that and some fabulous companies that come out of this as people are innovating and coming up with new ideas, but particularly everyone that's working for companies that are not trying to support humanity. So hope for the best with all of this.
Thank you so much. I think that's the perfect way to end this. Again, thank you so much for sharing your story, for your time. It was a pleasure discussing with you. Hopefully, when all this is sort of over or calmer, let's say, we'll meet in person. I certainly hope so.
I'd love to. Absolutely.
Take care. Good luck with.
Thanks for all the interest.
Yeah. No, but I'm really excited. I'm gonna get the book, so I'll probably read the book and then I'll have more questions, so we can do a round
good.
two.
Please do. Okay.
First question is, what impact do you want to have?
We want to be able to provide financial services for refugees who are carrying cash and fleeing conflict, so they don't have to be robbed or taken advantage of by border guards. We're looking to serve the 68 million refugees today and another 100 million that are facing crisis in the future.
How many jobs have you created so far?
Right now, we have 8 full-time staff, but are looking to really expand and build out this model. We have a agent network that we're looking to grow in the next couple of years and hope to be helping tens of thousands of refugees and migrants who are fleeing conflict across East Africa.
Could you refer a book, a podcast, a documentary that you've watched, something that you read that really resonated with you in the past few days?
Sure. So the big one that's always helped me get through tough times and crisis is a book called The Hard Things About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, just kind of hearing all his crazy challenges and stories. But I've also been reading A Wild Ride by Bob Iger, who's the Disney CEO who just stepped down. It's been a great one.
Next question: What are your company's values?
So our core values are based on transparency, integrity. We support those who are at risk. Again, focus on the unbanked and those that don't have access to financial services, but we treat each other with dignity and humility.
What would be a word or a quote or a phrase that would best describe you or your company?
Keep calm, carry on. I think we've been continuing to pursue and persist no matter what happens. And we're still here today, and we're still going to be here in the future. So just continuing to keep doing what we're doing and focusing on what matters.
Yeah, at Seedstars, I think, people that are building companies like yours, it's sort of the heroes of Seedstars, because we're looking for people like you. Who would be your hero, on your side?
Sure. So a lot of heroes, but I think recently two of our refugees that have been working for us, Ame and Shantz, who are in the Kiziba refugee camp in Western Rwanda. They've been fabulous. All the challenges that they've had to deal with growing up in a refugee camp with their families, and are now, I think, challenged more than ever, being more isolated in Rwanda, but they're continuing to push through and continuing to be a light and hope for their communities. So they're very inspirational to all of us. Hope you enjoy all the adventures.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, and talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks again.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Thanks.
Have a good one. All right. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to our hero's journey, and subscribe now for more stories on Seedstars podcast.